Hey all, I'm going to be brief as I want this video to be as concise as I can make it. This is an update/remake to my Pokemon Master Theory video I posted some time ago, updated with some new information and edited to be clearer. First, I'm going to be explaining specific story sections from across the series, which I'll use to back up my theories later on. With that quick preamble out of the way, let's get into this. 3,000 years prior to the events of Pokemon X and Y, a war broke out between two regions. This long conflict was drawn out and many lives were lost. People treated Pokemon with special powers as mere tools in their conflict, so they gathered lots of Pokemon, including those with special powers. In order to emerge victorious, the soldiers believed that they needed even more powerful Pokemon. As such, the soldiers of each nation took to forcefully conscripting Pokemon from each side. One such victim of this practice is a man named AZ, the king of the then ununified Kalos. AZ's history is detailed in various books found in Lysander Labs in X and Y.
When I was young, I went on a journey around Kalos with my Pokemon. I reached out to help those suffering because they had nothing. At first, they were grateful, but eventually they began to take my help for granted and demanded more and more. Will fools like those people consume the Kalos region? This world is stable and secure, so the population of people and Pokemon continues to increase unabated. But there's a limit to the amount of money and energy the world is capable of producing. Either everything is lost or only a handful are saved. This is something best not left to man. I must use a tool of higher power. The king's name was AZ, and he was both the beginning and the end. He used technology unlike any seen during that era to unite Kalos for the first time. The king was proud of the technology he had used to bring Kalos prosperity, but he couldn't help but use it in a way that he had never been intended. AZ, the man who was king, disappeared. When AZ, the man who was king, vanished, he took the key to the ultimate weapon. That is the item required to activate the weapon. The king couldn't escape war with those who targeted a wealthy Kalos. The war grew so violent and ugly, the king was forced to send his own beloved Pokemon into battle. AZ had a younger brother. It said he led a legion of greedy souls who wanted to seize the Kalos region. His dark intention was to make it his own. But when he saw how Kalos had been ravaged by the war, he took the weapon his brother had created, and he buried the weapon deep underground. The king's younger brother told his progeny of the location of the ultimate weapon, and died. That is something to be used by sophisticated powers, not by humans. Human beings must create a world where such a weapon is unnecessary. Full of sorrow, AZ built the ultimate weapon. When he did this, he left the following words. What's wrong with bringing something you love back into this world? Without my beloved Pokemon, no other Pokemon have any meaning. The mountains will never know one another, but people can encounter other people, and people and Pokemon mix together. Over the ages, people and Pokemon worked alongside one another and created many things. As a result of this, a leader appeared among the humans. That leader sought to produce even more goods. Increased production of goods created a gap between haves and have-nots.
So, from this, AZ lost his beloved Floette, a gift from his mother who had passed, and it too had lost its life in the war as just another sacrifice for the global conflict. AZ then had sought to construct a machine that could return life to his best friend, shaping its image after his Floette. What eventually becomes the ultimate weapon is the ultimate transcendence with its tragic tale, as the amount of power necessary to power this machine was thought unattainable for the time, but it was used, and that source of power was that of the life force of hundreds, if not thousands of Pokemon, those of which whose graves surround Geosenge Town. Now, initially the machine's only function was to restore life, and that it did, bringing back AZ's Floette and altering its color and DNA forever, removing its ability to evolve into a Florges, and giving it immortality alongside AZ. However, this isn't where the story ends with this machine, as now that he has been reunited and his sorrow from his loss could fade, however, it was when AZ's Floette realized how many lives were spent to revive her, she leaves AZ. In his deepened grief, he converts the machine into the ultimate weapon at this point, retaining the floral design, and he fires the weapon, utilizing the life of those Pokemon to obliterate both sides of the war. AZ's younger brother, formerly wishing to claim Kalos out of his own greed, comes to reason at the firing of the weapon, and vows to bury it so that it may never be used again. AZ would walk the Earth for the next 3,000 years distraught, attempting to search for his long-lost friend, having learned the consequences of his actions. He keeps the firing key of the weapon around his neck at all times. All would be well. However, another soul learned of the ultimate weapon and its capabilities. Lysander. Lysander is a scientist who is credited with creating the Holocaster, which allows for communication of people with the use of holograms, an evolution of the cross-transceiver in Unova. In reality, Lysander also doubles as the leader of Team Flare, a terrorist unit whose goal is to make the world beautiful and better, while making money and silencing any naysayers. The grunts and above have this simplistic criminal ideal, while Lysander's ideals go above and beyond that of his lackeys. His desires center around the legend of Calus' history in war and the use of the ultimate weapon. Hence his collection of research on AZ and his development of the weapon itself, going so far as to enslave the man to obtain his firing key. As Lysander faces off against Callum/Serena in the Lysander Labs, his ultimate plan is revealed as he is on his last legs. And this plan differs based on which version you are playing, and this fact is extremely important moving forward. In X version, Lysander hopes to use Xerneas' power over life to sync up with the ultimate weapon and force immortality on Calum/Serena and their friends, including himself. And in Y version, he hopes to use Yveltal's power over death to sync up with the ultimate weapon and immediately kill Calum/Serena and their friends, including himself. Everyone minus Lysander is able to escape the labs before the effect is able to go off, but Lysander has notably not escaped in both versions and is left to experience the brunt of his final action. He is buried in the rubble and is unheard of again in either game. Next, we're going to be looking at the thematic follow-up to Pokemon X and Y in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which itself harkens back to the idea of ends and beginnings. As like with AZ, we have thematic naming here with Omega and Alpha, the ending and beginning letters in the Greek alphabet. In these games, Brendan or May uncover the plots of Team Magma and Team Aqua, who wish to revive the super ancient Pokemon Kyogre and Groudon, and unlock within them an even more ancient power that will be used to kill all life on the planet and reverse the planet's growth back to its beginning, from end to beginning. Now, this is done using a process called primal reversion, which is similar in many ways to Mega Evolution, though each Pokemon's evolution scene carries a stigma or the Alpha or Omega sign denoted to each specific Pokemon. In the villainous team's base, the player can find lore documents that name and specify more about the villain's leader's plans.
Project Azoth, File Number 1. The goal of Project Azoth is to return the world, return everything, to the beginning. In order to further the project, we must succeed with research on Groudon/Kyogre's primal reversion. Primal reversion is a potential of Pokemon evolution, a potential different from Mega Evolution. Mega Evolution is made possible by energy of people and Pokemon. Primal reversion is made possible by natural energy. In primal reversion, Groudon/Kyogre absorbs natural energy into its body, therefore increasing its power dramatically. Both states significantly enhance Pokemon's power. The difference lies in the source of the required energy. Project Azoth, File Number 2. We intend to analyze the power of the ultimate weapon used in Kalos 3,000 years ago. We worked on the development of a drill weapon utilizing the technology. The seafloor cavern is sealed by the power of a legendary Pokemon. The only way to gain access to the cavern is to break the seal with power that exceeds that of the Pokemon. According to the research from the Petalburg Recon Team, Devon Corporation holds the secret of the technology of the ultimate weapon. We will dedicate our resources to obtain this technology.
Now, Azoth here is a very interesting term, as once again we get that A to Z connection in the name, but this actually refers to the term that's commonly used in alchemical settings. In alchemy, Azoth typically refers to mercury, as this was thought to be the base of all other metals. From Azoth, one could create the almighty Philosopher's Stone. So here, Azoth is being used as a base point, the desire to return to the most natural state of everything. And also here, we are let in on the fact that the Devon Corporation has been using the energy that was previously utilized for the ultimate weapon, the kind of energy thought to be too terrible and too great to ever use again. And Team Magma and Team Aqua want that power. Now, onto the topic of the Devon Corporation. This is one of my favorite disambiguations of this plotline here, because the Devon Corp were such a nothing burger in the original Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald releases, and suddenly now they're hugely important for the lore. So Joseph Stone, or otherwise known in-game as Mr. Stone, is the father of the world-famous Stephen Stone, and the president of the Devon Corporation. They're responsible for all the new types of Pokeballs available in the Hoenn region, as well as devices such as the Pokenav and other R&D endeavors. Some of these endeavors include what is known as Infinity Energy. This is the energy that is utilized by the Ultimate Weapon, or rather what Devon Corp has converted the Pokemon Bioenergy into, as a result of their research and development. You can find more information about what Devon Corp was doing with Infinity Energy in the Sea Malvo, a failed testing facility that was helmed by the Electric Type Gym Leader, Watson. A whole lot of lore inside, including the terrible realization that the game's encounter with Spiritomb here confirms the death of most of its passengers while it was functional.
Devon's secret investigation report. The development on new energy turned out to be true. The energy that uses Pokemon's bioenergy is called Infinity Energy. The investigation report on Watson, a series of actions related to the cancellation of the new Malvo project, turned out to be true. I recommend prompt disciplinary action against him as a traitor to our group. Doc, Team E Leader, Operative Group.
Now, there's a few pieces of information about Infinity Energy that I need to explain before we move out of the 6th generation games. First is relating back to Mega Evolution, as Mega Evolution requires 2 specific requirements to be met before it can occur, and first is the strong bond between a trainer and their Pokemon, and the second is the presence of a Keystone. The Keystones were formed when the Ultimate Weapon's energy reacted upon the Earth, on the various types of evolution stones known to the Pokemon populace, and created specialized stones that react to specific species of Pokemon. So it's interesting to note that this effect was related to evolution stones, because if we remember AZ's Floette from before, Floette as a species evolves with a shiny stone, but this version of Floette as coded into the game does not evolve. So its evolution was tampered with since it was evolved via evolution stone normally. And you'll note that every single Pokemon capable of Mega Evolution either does not evolve, or does not evolve from an evolution stone. Now, there is another topic I want to cover concerning Infinity Energy, but it's a bit involved, so I'm going to pull open my previous video section on the multiverse. Now, the last topic on Infinity Energy I want to bring up is the end of the Delta episode. A large asteroid, more than 6 miles in diameter, is on a collision course with the planet, and the initial plan devised by the Moss Deep Research Station, a facility funded and owned by the Devon Corp, mind you, planned to fire a rocket toward the asteroid that is packed with Infinity Energy, enough to power a dimensional shifter that would, upon making contact, send the asteroid to a parallel universe, thus saving Hoenn from total destruction. Zinnia, the character we mentioned a bit ago, is against this plan, and she argues that this plan would essentially be dooming another version of Hoenn to the asteroid's impact, as they would have no way to defend against it. This bit of dialogue goes back and forth and confirms the Pokemon multiverse, as each game exists in a separate timeline, meaning that Zinnia is correct. The original Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald games all exist in their own alternate timelines. And in these timelines, Devon Corp is not known for their development in Infinity Energy, thus explaining why Mega Evolution does not exist in these older titles, as it is the direct connection with the timelines that have X and Y's events play out, where their histories where Infinity Energy is uncovered and developed. So the plan then becomes to take it to the Sky Pillar, where they will challenge Rayquaza and convince it to help by Mega Evolving itself to destroy the asteroid before it makes contact. Now, we have a lot of information that we just learned from these games alone, but I'll quickly summarize the key points that we'll be following back up on. The Ultimate Weapon was built in the shape of a flower to honor the memory of AZ's Floette, and it requires Pokemon Bioenergy to power. AZ used this weapon to fire on Kalos' enemy during the Great War, and during it he gained immortality. AZ is a symbol for the beginning and the end, a massive change in time. Devon Corp then repurposed Infinity Energy for everyday use and became a tech giant, who then proposed they save the world by redirecting the asteroid into one of the older Pokemon games' timelines. Now we're going to head to Ultra Sun and Ultramoon, where we're introduced to Team Rainbow Rocket. This is a villainous team that is helmed by none other than Giovanni, but he, like the other team admins that have been gathered from previous Pokemon titles, all come from alternate worlds, separate from the ones that we encountered in the games they appeared in. This is a direct follow-up to the Delta episode storyline revelation of the Pokemon multiverse, as these villains are all ones who have won in their respective timelines.
They each have the legendary Pokemon that they were after at their disposal, and in the case of Maxie and Archie, they're using their old designs from Ruby and Sapphire versions, and not their more modern looks from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Ghetsis, as well, uses his design from Black and White, as opposed to his Black 2, White 2 design. As if they used this design, it would imply that he did lose to Hilbert and Hilbert in Black and White 1, which can't be if this is the version of him that wins. So to this Ghetsis, the events of Black 2 and White 2 don't even happen. After the defeat of the leaders here, the admins are banished back to their respective timelines, all except Giovanni. This is where things get interesting, as his words imply that he's going to take over another reality. This is a bit of a dual foreshadow, as he would then go to bring Team Rocket to our reality through Pokemon Go, and as well as his storyline in Pokemon Masters is a direct follow-up to his defeat from the Rainbow Rocket days in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, with the very same Mewtwo he used from those games being his sync pair. One more quick thing I want to add as a late addition to the scripts is the original Sun and Moon we learn of people called Fallers, people who have fallen through time across the dimensions, and Annabelle is one such person, as she originates from the original Hoenn timeline, as she was a frontier brain during the events of Pokemon Emerald. So not only are the alternate timelines aware of one another, but they're also able to be interacted with in more ways than just Infinity Energy. Now, Pokemon Masters is a huge grab bag of events because its whole premise is that Hoopa, a Pokemon known for pulling people and Pokemon through wormholes, is assembling trainers from all across the multiverse to partake in its game's events. So we have a lot of different versions of trainers from all across the timeline, such as the Giovanni we mentioned, who comes directly from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, as well as the Lysander from Team Rainbow Rocket, as he's sporting that very same Yveltal he was using from that game. Either that, or it's a Sonder from Pokemon Y version.
Now, my original video would go on to theorize using all of this information that the Scarlet and Violet DLC would include a continuation of this ongoing plotline. However, as we know now, this has not come to be. So I'm going to be recontextualizing the information we've learned in Scarlet and Violet and its DLC, and apply that to what we now little know of Legend CA. In Scarlet and Violet, Florian and Julian come across a textbook from noted researcher Heat on his expeditions to an area within Paldea known as Area Zero. AZ. Interesting. It is here in these records that the first mention of Paradox Pokemon are brought up, along with descriptions of these kinds of mysterious Pokemon. It is noted they have been sighted in the area before the events of the story with Professor Sada and Professor Turo, and their time machine pulling more and more of them from their respective time periods. I'll get to more of this in a second, but first I want to talk about Paradox Pokemon in general. They are Pokemon of immense power, and none of them have the ability to evolve. Yet, notably, the Pokemon who they are closely related to can evolve. They all do so with evolution stones. Fluttermane is an ancestor of the Mischievous line, who evolves into Mismagius with a Dust Stone. Screamtail is an ancestor to Jigglypuff, who evolves into Wigglytuff with a Moonstone. Sandy Shocks is an ancestor to Magneton, who in modern times can evolve into Magnezone with a Thunderstone. Iron Valiant is a bit of a hybrid descendant of Gardevoir and Gallade, but Kirlia notably evolves into Gallade with the use of a Dawnstone. And Roaring Moon is a bit also an edge case where it is based off of Mega Salamence, which Salamence evolves into using a Mega Stone. Now, I'm kind of hesitant to use these as examples because it is a paradox of already evolved Pokemon, much like Slitherwing and Iron Moth, or Roaring Moon, or Iron Thorns, and Brute Bonnet, since each of these Pokemon have evolution chains that don't involve evolution stones in them whatsoever. But I think it's important that these are the fully evolved forms of these families, whereas we have Paradox, Mischievous, Jigglypuff, and Magneton in place of their evolved forms. So I don't think it's a coincidence where, when possible, a Pokemon's normal evolution by evolution stone has been stunted by the energy given off by the Terra Crystals, as their centralized location in Area Zero doesn't seem to be a coincidence. My theory on this whole concept wrapping up this idea is that the Eternal Flower Floette is similar to these Paradox Pokemon. It is a Pokemon who evolves normally through an evolution stone that has had immense power seeped into its body, which has dramatically increased its lifespan, power, and design at the cost of not being able to evolve any further. Pokedex entries for some of these Paradox Pokemon, such as Roaring Moon, have indicated its design is similar and meant to be compared to that of a Salamence that has undergone Mega Evolution, which also confirms that Scarlet and Violet take place in a timeline where Mega Evolution is possible. Now, I want to quickly return to the topic of how Heath saw the Paradox Pokemon in the first place, as one of the central questions in Scarlet and Violet's plot is how this was possible since Sada and Turo were the ones to create the time machine. Now, this is due to the information we learned at the tail end of the Indigo Disk as we return to Area 0 to uncover a new section to explore called the Underdepths. Based on the composition of the rock, this area is likely formed approximately 2 million years prior to the events of the story, so the Terra crystals and, more importantly, Terrapagos itself has situated itself at the core of this area since that time. Given the power of terrestrial energy, as stated by Briar in the game's climax, they theorize that Terrapagos is comprised solely of terrestrial energy. This seems to be a massive alternative to infinity energy, or maybe even perhaps a crystallized and condensed version of such. Sort of like how carbon under immense pressure and time can form diamonds. Infinity energy can, under immense physical stress and given the right environment, can become terrestrial energy. Enough to have the power to temporarily shift Pokemon DNA, to change their type completely when harnessed. Or, say, create a time machine. Or even say further, create an environment that fulfills desires. It has power so unlimited it can effectively manifest the desires of those surrounding it, as we see with Heath. He sought to find new and rare Pokemon, so came the discovery of the Paradox Pokemon. But not just ancient Pokemon, even though they would have been around at the time, but future Paradox Pokemon if the player is playing Violet version. Those Pokemon exist here in Area 0 before a time machine is created, and that is because of Terrapagos' ability to fulfill Heath's desires by manifesting them. This is also how we see the Professor at the end of the epilogue in the Indigo Disk, having been pulled from time itself so we can give them the book they use to further their research, creating a bootstrap paradox for the entire ordeal. We didn't use the time machine to bring them here. The time machine isn't even in Kitakami. It's instead the Terra crystals located at the Crystal Pool, a place which has a history of allowing those who've lost family or loved ones to see their dearly departed within the mists of the pool. The Terra crystals have that wish fulfillment power to make those meetings happen, and did so for our Koraidon/Miraidon one last time. So, what does this mean moving forward? It is my theory in Legend ZA, we're going to be tackling a few ideas. 1. Infinity energy is going to be important, and its ability to even be harnessed further into something as powerful as terrestrial energy will be important. 2. The possibility that Lysander may return if this game takes place in a pseudo near future time span. We may be seeing Lysander again, as we have not seen the end result of the Lysander from Pokemon X, as the multiverse version pulled for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon specifically uses an Yveltal, which means he is coming from the Y timeline. But Lysander gave himself immortality at the end of that game. Sure, he was crushed under rubble, but we never saw a body. It is implied that his attack was successful, just that he was the only one that suffered from it. So we could have a near invincible character, or at least one who can live through anything until he is stopped. And 3, I think that the initial description as shown by Heath of the Indigo Disk having design similarities to Zygarde is not a coincidence, and the comparisons of Infinity Energy and Terrestrial Energy is not a coincidence. So I think we are going to be seeing more on this idea of wish fulfillment, desire fulfillment being used as a weapon. But that is all we have now until we learn more about Legend ZA, especially with the idea of returning the end to the beginning, sort of like Project Azoth, as we are, seeing Legends ZA. So until we learn more, that's going to be it. Tell me what you think. I know this is more recap than theory, but I wanted to include my theories here, and I love the plot line that we've seen since X and Y, and how it's continued in the series, so I just want to keep that trend going. If you like this, I'm going to check out my other content, and check you guys next time.